Thanks, Paul, and kia ora. Hi, everyone. We've got a lot to get through today, and it's great to see such a high level of interest in Tourism New Zealand's digital activity. I mean, this is an area where we have a significant spend and significant internal resources. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we can really have an opportunity to geek out together on some of the latest trends that we're seeing. There's a whole lot of graphs and charts to go through. And now it is really difficult to figure out where to kind of pitch these sessions because, frankly, there are tourism operators and industry players who are doing digital marketing exceptionally well in New Zealand. But there are also people who are really starting the journey. So hopefully there's something in here for everyone today. So thanks again for your interest and taking time out. And while we will start today's session with a high-level summary of our social and NewZealand.com numbers, we really want to zero in on mobile and social media as those are really the key change areas for us and for the industry that we need to get our heads around and that present significant opportunities for us to attract people to New Zealand and extract maximum value. So let's start with a high-level summary of where we're at in terms of our 2014 activity across social and NewZealand.com. We're still operating a very few social channels. We're not wanting to spread our butter across too much social bread. We focus our areas then on the channels that you see here. We also have a WeChat account set up in China. So for those of you not familiar with all these icons, our main areas of focus remain Facebook and Sina Weibo in China, which is the third one down. And Google+, which you can see a high number of fans there, remains a bit of a mystery to us. We don't spend a lot of time at all thinking about our G+ presence, but that number continues to build. So we will have a watching brief on Google+ as a social opportunity for Tourism New Zealand. What's been really great to see is that these numbers have increased by 1 million in the past 12 months. And frankly, hadn't even realised that until trying to pull these numbers together for this webinar. So the size of the community, I guess, is exponentially growing as consumers turn to social for content instead of other sources. Looking at NewZealand.com in terms of where our visitors are coming from, those of you who attended the last digital webinar about 18 months ago would have seen a similar picture. It pretty much reflects where Tourism New Zealand is investing its digital marketing effort and our priority, Tier 1, Tier 2 and emerging markets. So China still remains the biggest volume player. New Zealand's in there too, as usual. It's usually in third or fourth place. And obviously that's made up of industry when they're using the website to manage content and deals or just checking out what we're up to. But we estimate that there's more than 750,000 consumers a year who are international visitors to New Zealand using NewZealand.com while they're in country that are contributing to those numbers. The real movers on this chart are our emerging markets, India, Indonesia and Brazil. So they are between 200 and 500% up year on year in terms of the volume of traffic that we've received. So it's really making translation of content into Brazilian Portuguese and to Bahasa Indonesian a key priority for us with the numbers that we're getting through. Half of the users to the website haven't yet booked their New Zealand holiday. So we ask people in a survey a few times a year where they are in the process. 48% of people are considering New Zealand or they've decided on New Zealand but they actually haven't made the commitment yet. So our job is to get them across the line, is to give them more reasons to commit and reasons to book now. But 43% of people, which is the majority obviously as you can see from the chart, have actually booked. They're planning their trip, they're in that detailed itinerary fleshing out phase. And you can see that manifest itself in terms of where the referrals go to from NewZealand.com. 58% of the referrals that the site generates go to New Zealand-based product suppliers and operators, 26% to airlines, 11% to the offshore travel trade. This mix hasn't changed significantly year on year, but it's fair to say that the New Zealand-based businesses have increased their share ever so slightly, which is great news for us. It mirrors the mindset of the users who are on the website. We're trying to drive incremental value. We're wanting them to visit more regions, participate in more paid activities, and stay in commercial accommodation. So that's really good news. And registration in the New Zealand tourism database remains a really important priority for us. We do roadshows across the country to provide hands-on support for operators who regularly update their listings and deals, and those that do have a clear advantage. In terms of focusing your efforts, the priority would remain a business listing, followed by deals, followed by articles, in terms of your propensity to generate leads from the website. And there are a couple of exit surveys that MB and Statistics New Zealand and Tourism New Zealand collaborate on, and for the first time we're able to get a glimpse at what difference NewZealand.com is making in terms of driving higher value visitors to the country. So we asked people what travel planning sources they use when they are planning and booking their trip, and those people that claim to have used NewZealand.com are participating in 2 more activities than people who don't, and they're also visiting a whole extra region than those who do not. So we see the site as a value multiplier for the industry. They're staying longer, spending more, and doing more activities, which is fantastic. And that's absolutely not about us blowing our own trumpet. That's a real reason for New Zealand operators to remain active, particularly those whether you're in a main centre or off the beaten track, to remain visible and promote yourselves. And it's great to see that our combined efforts are attracting higher value visitors to New Zealand. So with that quick summary out of the way, we'll dive into mobile. It's an area of significant change for us as an industry, and there might have been a couple of you who turned up to the seminar at Trends in April 2014 who saw this chart. We're showing NewZealand.com visits by device. So the top line showing laptops and desktops, i.e. the traditional route, the bottom line showing tablets and phones. And we stood there at Trends and said, we predict by maybe Christmas that one of our markets, like Australia, might be at 50% for mobile in terms of phones and tablets. And that was our looking into the crystal ball at the rate of change. The reality is that it's gone like this. So we're at a point now at the end of 2014 where in some markets we're seeing more traffic from phones than by laptop or desktop. It has varied by market, and we'll come to that, but that prediction around Australia was eclipsed in about October when, in a particular week, we had 70% of Australian traffic hitting the website on a phone. So looking at device use by priority market, there's no need to really absorb all of these numbers, just to say that there are some interesting situations where in the UK, for example, seems to be a really high tablet market with 27%. And also that some of this runs counter to what we would expect in terms of what we know from consumer behaviour in a market. China is a mobile-first market, but we're not quite seeing that. Why is that? That's partly to do with our media strategy and our paid marketing activity that we're doing is not overly targeting mobile. But it's also because in that market we still get better performance from desktop than from phones. So you can see here how it changed. Japan is leading the way in terms of mobile phone usage, and since this information was gathered just a few weeks ago, they've eclipsed 50% on mobile phones now. But here's the rub, and this data is slightly older, but in short, our key metrics, i.e. generating leads to the industry and on-site engagement, are more challenging to achieve on a phone than they are on tablet and desktop. So we've got, and that's actually not unusual. That would be the norm across the entire travel sector or any vertical. But that is the issue that's facing, web managers and content creators around the world, is that the performance is not as great. So we want to dig into that, see what we can get out of it, and understand the consumers a lot better. So we've done some research to understand that what we're seeing in terms of performance is very much in line, if not ahead, of other travel benchmarks. But to improve the situation, we've done a lot of data analytics, which we're going to run into now. There are some key themes for us around improving mobile performance and some key challenges. Is that really we need to have a specific strategy for each device type. We can't really ignore tablet, even though it's not growing as fast as phone, because tablet does perform very well for us. There's a need to create specific types of experiences for mobile phone users. They are after slightly different information. They do have slightly different needs. A great realization is that we can actually sell harder to those on a phone in terms of where they are in the decision-making purchase funnel. There is no aversion to deals and there is no aversion to wanting to buy. That is a key reason why they're accessing the site through their phones. But also that we need to look at the way that we measure our success and understand that what looks like poor performance on mobile actually comes back as a really, from a second visit as a consumer, with really great performance on a tablet or desktop. This next chapter is just running through some insights that we've gleaned through our data analytics. It would be really interesting to know if any of you have dug around in this space to see if you see similarities or differences. All I'm really suggesting here is just a few ways in for you to understand your own mobile user behaviour. You can take from this what you like. The first one was really interesting, is that we looked at our maps on the website and how those are being used by folks with different device types. So what you see with the red bar and certainly green for tablet, effectively that mobile and tablet users are engaging with maps more. Maps inspire touch. So it's important to think about mobile not just being a small screen, but it actually has completely different functions, right? We all know that. Whether it's browsing the web or using apps, mobile is touch. You can shake a phone and sometimes that will have an effect. They vibrate. You can turn them into a flashlight. There's all sorts of utilities that are baked into these devices that aren't baked into desktops and laptops. So how does one take advantage of that? So we now know that this is a great way, that maps are a great way to engage and hold on to these consumers and get them learning and finding out more about New Zealand. So we're not going to be removing our maps from our mobile experience, and nor would I suggest that you would do the same. When are people accessing our website on each of the devices? These yellow sort of orange bars that go down these three charts show when the weekends are. So we see a big dip in desktop, which is the yellow, on the weekend, and an increase in tablet and phone. And this slide shows three different countries. It shows Singapore, USA, and Australia. Same trend, playing out in slightly different ways across all three markets. So what do we think about that? Well, people are accessing the site predominantly at work on their desktops during the week, but when it comes to the weekend, they're on their own time, so they're on their own personal devices, so we see these dips. So this has a really profound impact on our paid digital marketing activity, so that we know that we're more likely to see highly engaged mobile users on the weekend than the weekdays, so we can push out our paid activity and our social activity to coincide with this. This is the sort of stat that you might be able to run yourself through Google Analytics or any sort of system that you're using. What about time of day? I guess this helps to show just how curious we are to learn more about not just mobile users, but even our desktop users and general user behaviour. But this is looking at all of our markets. At what time of day are they most using the website? And we see peaks for desktop at around about 10 a.m. and peaks for personal devices at about 8 p.m. in the evening. But there are some interesting small variations by market. So this is how it looks in China. That desktop peak is more at their lunchtime rather than early morning. Makes kind of sense if you're at work getting inspiration or planning a trip. In Australia, the morning is more profound, but both for mobile and for desktop. So there's, I guess, the mobile commute is something that we would expect to see playing out in Australia as a great time to be sharing our social messages and making sure that our website is humming along at that time of the morning for Australia. In the USA, from a mobile perspective, we almost get a double dip. We get a really big peak at 6 to 7 in the morning and again at night. So we have two waves of opportunity, which probably represents the size of the market in the US, but also the fact that we're receiving multiple engagements per day. Another way of looking at things that might be really useful for your own channels, for your own site, is to look at what section of your website people are landing on by device. So these kind of hypnotic coloured circles, each of the different colours relates to a different section of newzealand.com, whether it be accommodation or things to do or destinations. So in Australia, looking at the outside circle, we see many more people landing in a piece of content that is in things to do than the other devices, a lot more blue. And in China, with the outside circle, we see a lot more red. We see a lot more people landing in our Getting to New Zealand section, which contains information about flights and visas. So what does this all mean? It means that there is a clear preference for some content over others by device, and that we can build on that by tailoring content to those devices. So in terms of our paid search strategy in these markets as well, we have a sense that mobile users might be more interested in some topics. So for Australia, it might be more around activities. In China, it might be more around access and some of the, hygiene information. It also shows us that this really varies a lot by market, which is the beauty, I suppose, of having local teams out there based in our hubs around the world who can make decisions about our paid marketing to fit the needs of each of these different countries. So there is a real scale of challenge given the level of variation across countries and devices here. So you can expect to see us looking at, for example, key markets like Australia and China. We're going to be doing mobile optimization to key pages within things to do for Australia and within Getting to New Zealand for China, because we know if that's where they tend to be landing, it's our job to make sure that we hold them on the website and transition them through to deeper engagement and operator referrals. I mentioned before that mobile users do appear to be keen to convert, that they are keen to reach out to you guys in the industry. Most of our optimization efforts to date have been focused on driving referrals to see how much capacity there is to improve that mobile phone performance. So we looked at the different types of referrals or calls to action that we have on newzealand.com and their performance by device. Now I know the labels down the left, they might be a bit hard for you to decipher. It's certainly TNZ speak, but in short, looking at travel deals, which are uploaded by travel agents and operators into newzealand.com, we see better performance on phones than we do from any other device type. Similarly for the fare finder with our international airlines. Custom campaign often plays out as some kind of joint venture deal or travel deal with a special offer, so quite similar to the one at the top. So this shows us that if we can put a good offer in front of people, make it prominent, and make it clear about the call to action, mobile users will lap that up, which is a great finding. It also shows us where mobile doesn't perform quite as well. So, for example, the third one down, listing. So once they're actually onto your business listing page, we're still getting much better performance in terms of referrals from a desktop and mobile. But we reckon we've got a solution for that, which I'll come to shortly. If you're thinking about your own website optimization efforts, another way in might be to look at, again, the sort of top-level navigation pages that you have on your website. So for us, getting here, getting around, and back, and to look at how many referrals or whatever the goals are that you have for that page or for those sections, how are those goals being played out across different devices. So if you look down to accommodation, we see a real big difference between the number of, or the rate of referrals with the mobile phone. Pretty similar for tablet and desktop, but there's definitely something wrong with that phone experience. So we went about trying to fix it. So we've been doing some targeted mobile improvements, not on paper actually, but here are some sketches of some of the layouts that we've been trialing. So we've been doing A/B and multivariate testing on some key pages to try and increase that mobile referral rate. And one of the tests that we've run showed that we could increase the relative referral rate by 77.6% with this revised layout. And that revised layout had a simpler search function, which makes sense. It's a little bit less clumsy for mobile users to deal with with their fingers, but also increased use of imagery on that page to show the different accommodation types. So this change rolled out to all editions earlier in the week, so we're going to see that accommodation performance bounce right back, which is great. I mentioned before also that the business listing pages didn't perform as well on a mobile phone as they did on a desktop. So we run a similar range of multivariate testing for business listing pages. Again, taking the insight that images are the thing that drive engagement on mobile. So we presented more images down the screen, and we've seen a 71% increase in our referral rate on these business listing pages. So you can expect now to see a higher number of mobile users reaching your websites or your deal pages from us as a result of these changes. And this change here doesn't just impact accommodation listings, it's across the board. It's also really good news that we can share these type of learnings with the partners that take the tourism data feed from Tourism New Zealand, because if we're testing and stress testing these types of layout options, then you might be able to take those insights and apply them to your own channels as well, which is, I guess, another benefit of taking those partnership feeds. I'll briefly touch on Essential New Zealand, which we're seeing steady growth from. We're just coming through our second summer of having our mobile app, about 150,000 downloads, just shy of that over that period. Curiously, about 70% are on Apple devices, despite the fact that there are more people with Android devices. We see a really strong skew to iPhones and iPads. And in terms of how this helps us understand consumers better, they visit the app more times than they would visit newzealand.com, but they spend less time with each of their visits. So we interpret that clearly they're highly engaged and they're probably independent planners, so the increased number of visits is, I guess, telling that there's a real task orientation in terms of the information that they need. The short amount of time tells us that they know exactly what they're going into the app to do or to find, and then they're leaving the app because they're looking for a certain activity in a certain region. That finds and contacts an operator, and that's job done. The usership on mobile, to underscore this, is much more significant on newzealand.com than our mobile app. We are adding more products to the app in the near future, and recently we launched a Near Me function, which was just before Christmas. So this allows people, when they're in the country, to pull up the activities that are closest to wherever they're standing or accessing the app from. So it's really important that, again, in the tourism database, that you've got your location information absolutely spot on, because we don't want to send people down the wrong street to your front door. So there's a key challenge here for our industry. How mobile ready are we? Putting newzealand.com aside for a moment, you'll notice up in the top left, Google has started experimenting by signposting websites in their search results that are mobile friendly, and they'll be monitoring what difference that makes on all of our behaviour. But your own mobile friendly web pages, doesn't have to be a whole site, but key pages certainly. How's that online booking experience? Is there live inventory? Google tell us that 70% of online bookings made by mobile are for same-day experiences or accommodation. So live, not cheap, but live inventory is absolutely critical. And in terms of where we can help you, we're trying to drive you more leads. We're improving the mobile experience to get more mobile traffic hitting your channels. So when you're managing those URLs for Book Now and websites and your travel deals in the tourism database, have you had a look at that experience on a phone to ensure that people are going to a mobile optimized page that's usable, where they can complete their task and where they get a really good positive first impression? If we as an industry can improve our mobile capability, it is a serious competitive advantage for New Zealand. So I fully encourage you to ask questions, stay in touch, and the more we can share this type of information, the better. I'd love to hear from you, of those of you that are finding particular mobile success in terms of website optimization. So that closes our mobile chapter as we change gear and move on to social. But I thought it is important to point out that there is a relationship here. Because social media, in terms of access, is mobile media. So this chart here shows us the devices by which people all over the world access Facebook. Whilst the majority is multi-screening with desktops and mobile, the shift clearly is away from desktop only towards mobile only. So nearly 40% of the world's population never see Facebook on a desktop. So social media is mobile media, and there is an important relationship there in terms of thinking about your end-to-end consumer experience. If you're increasing the level of effort into your social marketing or social content, you absolutely need to be increasing the level of effort in terms of your website's mobile capability. The two can't operate independently. So in the social chapter, I'm going to touch on the following things. I'm just going to talk about where we see social playing a role in the decision-making process. I'm going to talk about the art and science of social content and marketing. We have increased the level of effort that we're putting into Facebook as a channel. I'm going to touch on Instagram briefly and talk around New Zealand visitor advocacy and what we can do to collaborate to get more people who are here on holiday sharing their experiences. I probably don't need to give you too many reasons to believe in social. 83% of international travel considerers trust a recommendation from family and friends. So where are they getting those recommendations? They're getting it through social sources. I'm going to assume that you guys are already believers and move on to how to really optimize these efforts. So I've bastardized this chart from Google here, which shows the stages of travel planning. You can use different words or think about it in different ways. The key difference here is that as people move from dreaming and considering a destination to more deeper research, to booking and experiencing, a couple of years ago people were saying that the sharing used to all happen in the experiencing space. The reality is now is that the sharing is happening throughout the journey to different degrees. They're sharing with friends, they're sharing their ideas, they're sharing the fact that they are excited about their trip. And in that dreaming stage, we really see Instagram having a key role for us in terms of the Pure New Zealand channel, as well as the work that we do with bloggers and social influencers. So our strategy is not just focused on our own channels, it is absolutely focused on getting great stories out through third parties, through their channels. And TNZ and 100% Pure New Zealand can be invisible in that process. We want to identify people who have a disproportionate influence among our target market and get them telling 100% Pure New Zealand stories themselves. We're building some serious momentum in the space now, and that's really one to watch. Facebook and Weibo and Twitter really come into it more for us on the cusp of dreaming, but really in that researching place. So people are pretty much hooked. They're really seriously considering New Zealand. We've got to give them practical content. We've got to remove barriers for them. We've got to provide them with recommendations on things to see and do and help them understand how to stitch their holiday together. We do very little in social media in the booking space. We do some joint venture work through Facebook, but it's a very small focus for us. And then when people are here in country experiencing New Zealand, that's where our platforms like hashtags come into play, as well as visitor advocacy, which I'll come on to shortly. So it's important for you, depending on how many channels you're operating in, how many markets you're operating in, to have specific roles for each channel, and that's really important. We're not posting, for example, the same content across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram every day. We have a different content stream for each. And that also recognises that our fans are possibly fans across channels as well, so they don't want to necessarily see the same piece of content floating across different channels. And while CNZ is a well-resourced, organisation, we still only have one FTE, one person in the organisation whose role it is to look after our English language social channels, and one role in China for Weibo and WeChat, etc. But the social landscape has not been without challenge in recent years. Some of you will be familiar with the clampdown, I suppose, that Facebook has been placing on brands in terms of the number of fans that they're able to reach with each piece of content. This graph, a year old, shows how that impact is more negatively affecting brands with more than 500,000 likes, which is the grey line down the bottom. But effectively, if you've got 100 fans and you put out a piece of content, you may reach 6 or 8 of those fans if you're lucky. What's going to make the difference is whether that content is shared and the virality of that content. So given that big brands are more negatively affected, we've had to have a long, hard think about our relationship, not just with Facebook, but with social in general. So there's two key realizations for us. One is around fan acquisition. It's no longer an objective. Of course, we like to keep a track of it, and I shared the number of fans across our social channels at the start of this presentation. It's common currency. We all kind of understand that there's a relativity that we can imply there, but we have no work that is going out on Facebook specifically that is designed to acquire fans. There are no post types or formats that we're putting out which are trying to generate likes. Our focus is absolutely on reaching and motivating the right people, whether they're fans of ours already or not, and that we see that our increased fan numbers is an absolute side effect of well-executed activity and high-quality content. And also, there's limited point in really building this fan base if we can only reach less than 10% of them with each post. So the key message here, we're focused on reaching the right people, whether they're our fans or not. So I'll share with you the reach of our Facebook content over the last year, and you'll probably see the point in this graph where we decided to change our minds. Quite staggeringly, in the last quarter of 2014, we were reaching around 3 million people per day on Facebook with 100% pure New Zealand content. There's two spikes in November, December in the organic space that you'll see, which was around the Hobbit Fan Fellowship contest in New Zealand, and then subsequently the premiere of the film in London. And that organic content performed far beyond our expectations in terms of the number of consumers reached. And there is a very tight relationship between paid and organic activity on Facebook. So 3 million people per day, that doesn't mean that everyone is seeing our ads, but there's certainly an argument to say that we are reaching whole new pools of active considerers with our Facebook work. We're attracting dreamers and planners into our campaign net, and then seeing that flow through to the website and other channels. And fan acquisition just happens off the back of this. So when you're reaching this many people, we are also acquiring fans. Last week, we acquired about 7,500 new likes off the back of our Facebook activity. The week before that, it was 11,000. So they're huge numbers for us. But again, the key is, whilst we're really pleased with that, we're not designing our work with that as the objective. The second realization, obviously, was, rather than get upset about the organic reach disappearing on us under our toes, actually just taking an objective look at the Facebook platform and understanding the power that's inherent in terms of the consumer data that they have. I mean, we are a niche player we are an exotic destination to many of our priority markets. So we have to be highly targeted, and we are targeting for value. So we saw a key opportunity to use Facebook to target absolutely the right people, which is really what we're calling the science of social media marketing. And this is where many of you will be playing really well in the space already and seeing great results of quite a low investment. But just to run through very briefly the sorts of targeting levers that we are utilising, and clearly age and demographic, and as an example of demographic. So we look for people when they are in one of our priority markets in the right age bracket. If they have a status that changed to engage, is that an opportunity for us to sell them on New Zealand as a honeymoon destination? And that might be really relevant for our India market. I reckon 80%, 90% of our content that we're putting out on Facebook is location specific. So if you go and have a look at our timeline from here in New Zealand, you're seeing a fraction of the content that is generated across our network. Location targeting is absolutely vital. We know what the differences are, apart from language, between our UK and Australia and Japanese active considerers, and we want to make sure our messages are bang on for that market. Social, and Facebook particularly, is really good at targeting niches and special interests or backpackers. So, there are communities and people on Facebook are expressing their interests both overtly through the pages and brands that they like or within their social profiles as well. So this enables us to not target all people interested in golf, but potentially people interested in golf in a certain country, in a certain city, of a certain age that we know represents the opportunity for New Zealand visitors. And we've also started work in this last sort of 4 to 5 months and doing a lot more re-messaging and audience profiling. So the mega trend here is to move from simply demographic marketing to more behavioural marketing. So there's 3 things just to talk about that we have up our sleeve. One is that when people come to newzealand.com and are currently logged into Facebook, we're then able to re-message that person on Facebook after a period of time and deliver a really relevant piece of content to them. We know that they looked at content about Queenstown or cycling. We can serve up a message to try and bring them back to the website and keep them motivated. The frequency of messages from the campaign is really, really important. So that is absolutely out of the box. Anyone can utilise that functionality, and we're seeing great success from that. We're also developing with Facebook 2 sort of customised clusters of fish, I suppose, to go fishing with. One is travel intenders, and this is really looking at people's online behaviour and looking for clues about when people are in market for a travel decision, but particularly when they're in market for a travel decision that might be long haul or ideally to Australasia. So pools of people that constantly change that we can message through Facebook. They're highly unlikely to be our fans. If they look like they're on the cusp of making a decision, let's make sure that that decision is New Zealand. And secondly, we're taking the data from Facebook users based overseas who have visited New Zealand and their traits and their behaviour and their characteristics and building out lookalikes of those audiences for people that display the same behaviour. Are they more likely to be potential New Zealand visitors than people that we have less information about? So through these tools, which is why we're able to reach such a high number of people, and we're able to continually test and learn and optimise about where we're going to see the greatest success. But it's fair to say that whilst we're really pleased with the engagement that we're seeing, the level of website visitation that we're seeing, we're really just starting this journey, and it's an exciting one for sure. The science that I've spoken about is as important as the art. So we're often asked about best practice and post types and when to use in what situation. And there really is no such thing as best practice, but there are some key principles. But the first principle has to absolutely be, are you reaching the right people? Once you've got that in mind, then you can really start to think about making sure that your content belongs in the Facebook newsfeed. So I guess here's an egg carton, but is your content one of the white eggs or is it the brown egg? Because if it's the brown egg, it's much less likely to be engaged with and be thumb-stopping. Because, of course, your message is going to appear on Facebook, probably on a phone, more often than not, between two personal pieces of content, usually between a baby photo and a cat photo. So what is it about your message that is going to make people stop and consider and absorb that? Particularly important if you are doing advertising and they haven't signed up or liked your brand or your business, and they haven't signed up to hear from you before, you've got to try even harder to make sure that you consider your content from the fan's perspective. So put yourself in their shoes. Jumping right out of tourism, a really simple example, what we've seen in social and what we're trying to achieve is moving from this, like us, if you like it, if you're using our product, which ain't going to be that relevant to me between a cat photo and a picture of someone's daughter, to this. They've understood their audience, they know what attracts them, they know the type of content that they're likely to be seeing in their news feed, and they've designed something for their brand that works in this scenario. So the science ensures that you're reaching the right people, and art ensures that you belong in newsfeed. And there's two real post types that we're seeing the most consistent success of across the board if I look at all of our Facebook activity for sort of content that's designed to really get social engagement, so comments and shares within the Facebook ecosystem. Simple page posts with images are working best. Very short copy, shorter than a tweet, and letting the image do the talking. If website visitation is the goal of your Facebook content, then the link post with the call to action button for us more often than not performs much better than any other type. And again, think about mobile. It's a touch environment. So when people touch that image, if it can take them somewhere relevant or cause an interaction, that's fantastic. Facebook video is going through the roof at the moment. It's a real key mover for them, and it has the potential within a short period of time to overtake YouTube in terms of the number of views per day. So in terms of good practice here, we see a lot of great examples from the industry already, making sure that you're not embedding YouTube clips that you're uploading to Facebook directly. The first 3 seconds is absolutely critical. So a good litmus test that I've put here in this slide is, how does it appear if there's no sound and it's on a phone? Is there enough attention-grabbing content in those first few seconds to hold me on that video and make sure that I'm going to watch it? And a key metric that you can look at in Facebook Insights is when are people, leaving the video? How far through the video are they getting? Because the more, steep that curve is, the more issue you have. So we use this one to look at, as we increase the amount of video content that we're putting out, how effective has that content been? Have we reached the right people, and are they motivated by the content? And importantly, you can, through Facebook, look at the profile of the people who have viewed the video effectively all the way to the end, to 95%, and you can retarget those people and you can build lookalikes from that group so that you can go and re-message them with either further content or, or offers. So do think about Facebook as a great platform for video, but do understand that it's primarily taking place on a mobile environment, and it can be really hard work to make sure that you're holding engagement of users right to the end. So short and sharp is great. I'll briefly touch on our Instagram account, which we have still really sort of dipped our toes in. It might surprise you guys. I mean, we were relatively late to the party. We didn't want to launch into new channels, without a clear rationale and a clear content strategy. Instagram is all about the top of the funnel. It's all about inspiration. It's about simplicity and inspiring creativity. We've amassed 52,000 followers, and we've only posted 150 times, not even 150 times. So we are really excited about the ongoing potential for Instagram. You know, we look across the Tasman at Tourism Australia's 1.1 million followers. You know, obviously with a degree of envy. They were establishing that channel long before we were, but our engagement is much higher. We're seeing fantastic engagement in the realm of 8 to 10% with every post we put out. But it's not about us acquiring those fans. It's about the platforms that are enabled. It's about us stimulating conversations around NZ Must Do and Real Middle Earth. When we started Instagram less than a year ago, there were 500 posts on Instagram, hashtag NZ Must Do. None of them from us, obviously, but just from visitors and industry. Now there are 35,000. So we've been able to increase that effectively by 35,000 by being active in only 150 posts. So it is absolutely about us building our brand and telling a fantastic destination story, but we're in this to be part of those conversations and to stimulate those conversations. Instagram for us is proving most useful in the USA, Australia, and the UK. And it's going to remain a key focus for us as we seek to drive advocacy from visitors who are coming to New Zealand. So if you think back to that Google chart where I talked about the role of our different social activity around dreaming, planning, and experiencing, visitor advocacy is a piece of work or a program of work which we're keen to launch into more, that Instagram is helping us support, as well as Twitter to an extent. We know that people are inspired to visit New Zealand if they can see a photo of that from a friend. So what can we do as an industry to get more content created by international visitors while they're here? Obviously, it's great to see more content created by Kiwis too, but we want content created by people who have international-based friends in our priority markets. So how do we activate more sharing, and how do we activate more real-time sharing so that there is a window into New Zealand? It's not about acquiring fans, it's about getting a piece of content of an activity or a location or a scenic attraction out into someone's personal Facebook or Instagram feed. But absolutely, hashtags and other social platforms provide us with an opportunity to really see the growth of that. And if you look at NZ Must Do, you know, guarantee like 99 times out of 100, it tells an absolutely fantastic New Zealand destination story. So you can expect to see us starting a program of activity in the autumn that is seeking to drive advocacy from international visitors. And it is a piece of work where we need industry understanding, absolutely industry support, and we need to break down some key barriers. So it's above and beyond just joining the NZ Must Do conversation yourselves with your businesses, but it's about your customers as well. It's about getting free Wi-Fi in hotels and motels and at key activity locations to compel customers to share. And it's about, we're small enough as an industry to not have selfish players. So it isn't about us or you acquiring likes and acquiring fans. It's absolutely, we will win if we can get more people sharing positive content about New Zealand, because that's what advocacy is all about. And we have a huge advantage in this space, that even though New Zealand, Tourism New Zealand's numbers might sound big, our number of fans and followers or the number of people that we're reaching each day, the reality is that we are a drop in the ocean in terms of the international destination space. We have to work really, really hard, all of us, to be seen and be noticed. And our huge advantage that we have up our sleeve is that we are a much-loved destination. Our Net Promoter Score is really high. And secondly, we are a really photogenic destination. So in terms of what's going to create some stopping content in, Sally's newsfeed from her friend who's here on holiday, more often than not, we're going to hit the mark. So we have a huge advantage and we must capitalize on that. And so that about wraps it up from me. I hope you've been able to take something away, whether you see yourself as a digital guru or a digital novice. As I said via email, I'd love to hear from those of you who have your own insights, because we have as much to learn from you as you may from us, because your size and your ability to be nimble makes you more responsive to change. So all the best for your digital marketing future.
Fabulous. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for that excellent in-depth analysis of our web and social performance, I guess both the art and the science. So it's now question time. We've already got a few questions in the queue here, which is fantastic. And just a reminder for those of you that may have joined since I did the housekeeping, if you want to ask a question of Dave, just go to the Q&A icon on the top ribbon and type that in, and we'll throw that in Dave's direction. So ready for the first one, which is a question on how well does video content on newzealand.com perform on mobile?
Yeah, hi, that's a good question. Look, it performs pretty well. We think that we can improve engagement with video content by just through design. So there will be some design changes coming out in the next 4 to 6 months. That might sound like a long time, but it will sort of drip out over a period of time, which is absolutely seeking to ramp that up. Mobile users absolutely are keen as to consume video content. Our opportunity is to make that video content more front and center. So it's critical to our future. Internally, we're going to be investing more in the creation of video content, but we're also going to be utilising great video content produced by industry and visitors to New Zealand as part of that, because often it's not just up to us to tell those great stories. So it performs comparably, but we think we can even make it work harder.
Great, thanks, Dave. A question here regarding our Essential NZ app. Do operators need to supply info for the app, or does your team decide who goes on that app?
Yes, the team decides. No, the app is in many ways a cut-down version of newzealand.com. The product that's in there is specifically activities. So if you are maintaining your activity listing in the New Zealand Tourism database, and that listing is active on newzealand.com, there's a good chance that it will be also in the Essential New Zealand app. So for a particular region, like Nelson, we'll choose which activity types or activity categories we think are most relevant and most compelling, really, which sum up that region's story and that region's offering, and that will bring through the listings straight from newzealand.com and just certain aspects of those listings, including images, pricing, and links. So the short answer is keep your product up to date in the New Zealand Tourism Operator database and all will be well.
Right, so I guess, Dave, if we included everything, it would just be an incredibly bloated app and wouldn't perform very well.
That's a good point, Paul. I mean, the data that we have in the app now is at a point where the download size, we really wouldn't want to increase that. I mentioned that we will be pulling through more product into the app, but that will really only apply to those people who are accessing the app with an internet connection. A key selling point of the app is that you can access information without an internet connection, and that will be limited to our essentials list of about 1,000 business systems.
Great, thanks. Question here on how much do we spend on paid Facebook posts?
That's a good question. I can't answer that straight out. My team doesn't take official responsibility for all of our paid marketing, but I think if you think back to the chart in the deck where it shows a big wall of reach going up to that 3 million people per day, that's an indication of how significantly our investment had swung towards Facebook. So I think it's fair to say that if we thought about all the different digital media properties and channels around the world that we're carrying our marketing in, Facebook would be number 1 or 2.
Great. So on the increase then?
Year on year, significantly.
Cool. Do we have any examples, Dave, of specific bloggers or influencers that we have worked with?
Yeah, there's a series that's a video series that's I guess coming to fruition right now, actually. Many of you will have helped and supported us with Devon Supertramp. So if you look for the user Devon Supertramp on YouTube, there's been a couple of videos released that we've had a hand in helping produce. I think there's going to be up to 15 videos that come out from around New Zealand with specific tourism activities. There's been a lot of activity that they've done in their spare time, but we've had a role in helping them access places like Hobbiton, and there's a great sandboarding video from up in Northland that came out last week, and they're getting in excess of 500,000 views each time a video goes out. So I'm happy to provide more details around some of those influences, and we're building more momentum in that space.
Fabulous, and probably a final question as we've just expended our hour time slot. So can Facebook targets work within New Zealand for location? In other words, Northland or Auckland?
Yes, it can go down to that level of granularity, and we use that offshore, for example, in targeting specific cities within the US where we know international arrivals tend to come from and where there's a big pool of active considerers. So yeah, it's highly sophisticated and probably more sophisticated than any platform we know of out there at the moment.
Great stuff. So thank you, Dave. That's the end of the question line. Any last words to sign off?
No, thanks again for the team for hanging in there. Thank you.